Welcome back on the AM show, and it is time for us to dig into myriad issues from the Wa Central constituency and the major issues they face there in terms of flooding and their roads to other matters of national scope. Joining me on the show this morning, he's a long-standing member of parliament, and he is a member of the 8th Parliament as well of the Republic. I'm talking about none other than the member of parliament for Wa Central himself, Rashid Pelpuo. A very good morning to you.
Hi, good morning.
Thanks for making it on the AM show.
And good to see you.
Thank you, sir.
Right.
Thank you. So let's get into the major issues. I usually like to start off conversations with members of parliament from their own constituencies. Okay. So I'd like to find out, how is Wa Central faring? What are some of the positives and what are some of the things that are affecting the members of your constituency?
Well, Wa Central is okay. We are faring well. Except for the general pain we are all suffering because of the challenges we are facing with the economy. And so business is slowing down because money has become very difficult to acquire, and the people are normally in business. Farmers are having challenges because of the difficulty in getting fertilizer to farm, and it's been tough with them, and sometimes you watch it, you don't know what to do to help them because the expenditure required for them to get on their feet to work is so high, and it does appear government has gotten to a point when they can't do much. Yeah, and the pain is reaching out to everybody. So, but generally, Wa Central is settled well. Peace is fine. The authorities responsible for peace are doing well so far, and we are looking forward to achieving greater heights with time, especially when we are able to resolve the question of a government in power not doing much to support the people. Let's
talk about flooding. The rains are back, so to speak. We've had the first rainy season, and the second one, we're on the cusp of the second one, though the seasons seem to have changed a bit on the back of climate change, global warming, and all of that. But the next season is going to be the heavier season. I hear in some parts of the northern belt, you have only one rainy season.
One rainy season.
While in other parts, you may have the two seasons like we have here down south. What is the situation in your constituency, and what is the flooding situation there like?
Well, we are not suffering as much as the upper east and parts of northern region, but in the Wa Central Wa municipality, or in my constituency, I think that the rains are quite okay. The intensity hasn't gotten to the fact that to the point when the people will be suffering as much as we are seeing on television with others. So we are a little bit luckier than the rest of them.
So flooding is better.
It's better.
In your constituency. How about your roads? What are they like?
The roads are bad.
And maybe general infrastructure, health infrastructure, among others.
Thankfully, the last regime had invested so much in health. So we have a lot of cheap compounds all over. We have a number of clinics, and we have our regional hospital constructed. So that is
under the erstwhile administration.
Under the erstwhile, no.
Because
this administration
has Agenda 111 and a number of other projects that it is hoping to bring to bear. Agenda 111. Is there any of the targets, districts or otherwise, in your area?
No, not one I know about. Yeah, we have a big. We have a big support in terms of health infrastructure coming from the NDC administration. So, but it's supposed to be a continuum because we need to renovate the Wa Central, Wa Municipal Hospital, which used to be the regional hospital, is in bad shape. We've been asking for such an intervention. It's not coming forth. And so that is the big challenge. And the needed infrastructure for the regional hospital to pick off and to have the investment fund for it to be able to operate fully is not also available. Government is always promising to do it. When the president went there, he was confronted with the issue, and he made a promise, and the promise hasn't been fulfilled yet. So those are the key challenges we have, and hopefully, with time, they will be fully addressed, but not now. In the present situation, we are just making do with what we had in the previous regime. And in other areas, I think that the major challenge we have is job creation for our people. And we have a lot of young people who have finished the university and senior high, secondary school, and are still, looking around for jobs. We hear about jobs created for, in the military, in the police, in the forces. Lots of our people apply, and normally they are disappointed. And those are the big challenges we are having, because in the end, it is how to keep the families going, how to get jobs for the many people who are finished school and are looking for opportunities. If West Central is not particularly taken care of, it will be a worry to us. It is often a worry to us.
I see. Well, at least some developments going on. When was the last time you were in your constituency?
I returned from my constituency at the time Honorable Bagbin was, that's about a month or so ago.
A month or so ago.
Yeah.
And there are a number of matters I'll be taking you to Parliament on. There's been talk about Niger, for example. I wanted us to start from the point of the economy.
Yeah.
But even the speaker has been talking about developments in Niger and other things happening. But how do you reflect on that? We have the latest victim of a coup d'etat or a military putsch being Niger. We've had Mali go. We've had Burkina Faso go. We've had Guinea go. In the sub-region since 2020, 7 countries have fallen by the hands of coup d'etats from West to Central Africa.
Yeah.
9 attempts, because some of the attempts were foiled, like the one in Guinea-Bissau. But 7. I don't remember the last era where we had so many coup d'etats in that region. It started right after the one against Nkrumah, and then there was a phase all the way to the 80s.
Yeah.
And then that phase sort of truncated democratic rule. But why do you think this is happening again?
Well, it is a worry to many of us observing the situation, the international political transformation going on. Coup d'etats occur in countries where the people feel dissatisfied with the ruling class, and the military decide to take over power because they think they are the last stop. But in recent times, it does show that the democratic transition we have gone into is beginning to slacken. It's beginning to show that it might not be the one acceptable to Africa, and that the constitutions we have drawn, which lead us into the present dispensation, must be re-examined to see whether that is what we want. I can also say that the possibility that leadership is becoming too complacent about being in power, and so begin to sidestep the will of the people in the social contract between us, is beginning to take shape. Leaders may have forgotten that when they are in power for the people, not for themselves.
Right.
And so whenever you slack from being a committed person on behalf of the people, serving the people, and rather than, serving yourself, then the dissatisfaction begins to grow. It might not be realized immediately. It is when the external military strikes that you begin to examine that you were not doing what you were supposed to be doing. There are often some red lines leaders must not cross. Yeah, but
do you feel leaders in the sub-region are actively crossing those red lines?
they are actively crossing the red lines.
I mean, look at some of the things that are pointed to. Alassane Ouattara.
Yes.
On the back of what happened with Laurent Gbagbo in 2010 and everything since then, you go for 2 terms, and then all of a sudden, you tweak the constitution, go for a third term.
They want to live beyond their historical provision for a term of office allocated to them. They transgress the constitution, and that's often the problem. So essentially, it is about the economy. Most of the time, they violate the fundamentals of the rules that govern the governance of an economy. And when they do so, they tend to benefit themselves rather than benefit the people. And so it becomes a key factor. Then the second one is the political transgression of the rules, of the laws, existing rules that should keep you in office. Being autocratic, tending to be autocratic, tending to be to keep the people, lead them into fear and panic by imprisoning them, by bringing situations that people might die without explanations of because they oppose you and all that. Those are political reasons, transgressing their human rights. And so when you violate their economic rights and it is in pain, and you violate their political rights, and it also becomes a problem. So the leaders must begin to rethink about what they do when the will of the people is entrusted into their hands.
Right.
And for me, in West Africa, we need to do much more than we are doing now. There is a consistent, what do you call that? Consistently, we are not developing beyond where we meet the economy. You come to an economy, you do the bad things that you shouldn't do. When people complain, rather than addressing the problem, you say, oh, this government has also done that. Yeah. This fellow has also done that, as if to suggest that you are brought to continue the bad things other people have been doing. So more and more, So
there tends to be a continuum in bad governance rather than good governance, rather than improving, the lot of the people.
Yes.
We like to play the game of passing the buck. So if things don't go well, but they also didn't do it well, or they failed at this. So if I fail, while in essence, we bring political parties into power, they will teach you in political science, there's something called delivering the bacon. You must deliver the goods to the people.
Yeah.
Once you make the promises, you have to be seen to be trying to deliver that. I remember in the United States when former President Obama was president, there was something called the Obameter. A meter measuring Obama's tenure. Even there, I think he scored 50-something% or slightly less than 50. But you can see how rigid they were with measuring rhetoric versus outcomes, deliverables.
Yeah.
But here, it appears there's such a yawning gap between what we are told and reality from both ends. And I will say, your party as well.
Yeah.
I mean, the NDC and the MPP.
We had.
I don't know how that works.
You are right. We have our challenges. We had our challenges as NDC when we were in power. It is normal with a government that you should not perform the role of an angel. There are situations where you slip, and when you slip, you have to admit to that. And I do admit to the fact that some of the challenges we face were noticeable and were the reasons why we were kicked out of office. But for the MPP to come, did worse than we did, and still point at the small mistakes we have committed, is to refuse to accept responsibility. They pass on the worst, and then they try to take comfort in the bad things they do. And so corruption is the definition of dissatisfaction with the people. When the people are dissatisfied, they can point at somebody who has, who shouldn't have what he has, or a government agent who should not be where he is, and who is there because he has taken much more than the people have allowed him to take. And so it becomes a problem. And it is the character of the Ghanaian, and we need to address it, that we have to make sure we can criticize the government and make sure we get the right thing done, whether you are supporting the government or not, rather than to say that, oh, you NDC, you are not the person to say that. You also did that. You also did that. And you see the young people in this our country doing the same. Put something on air, and then you go to the, especially social media, go to see the comments on social media. Oh, NDC did worse. Oh, NDC did, so we should continue doing the worst. So the West should compare with each other, not the good. So I think that, so West African countries seem not to be seeing in focus the challenges ahead of us, the need for us to transform our economies, and the need for us to address the concerns of our young people. And so we all the while relapse in what we do and creating vacuum and creating a situation where the military can come in. We are against military takeover. We don't want it to happen in Ghana. We don't want it to happen anywhere else in Africa. But it is important that the peer review mechanism that allow states to review what each other does must take a new life, so we can caution each other. Because you cannot caution, I can caution Nanado from doing what he's doing now, because he has a response to give me. But when another president sees the bad things they are doing today, and they are able to bring it out to him, there's a very likelihood that he might listen, But people they find sweetness in being in power and exploiting the people. Are you
suggesting then that, and this may be the case, that most of our leaders, if not all of them, I always single out Paul Kagame in Rwanda, and I always say that we can all have our problems with Paul Kagame. I have some problems with Paul Kagame. He's not perfect, but look at what he's done for his country since the genocide in 1994 and where they are now. Let's not kid ourselves. Ghana is behind Rwanda. Let's not kid ourselves. We are behind them in most things. In terms of strong institutions, the very strong institutions Obama spoke of and other things, we are way behind them. Let's not even pretend. Have you been to Rwanda? But the point also is that if our leaders, and most of them are friends, are doing certain wrong things. Our president is friends with Alassane Ouattara. I don't know whether he spoke to his friend, Alassane Ouattara, in Côte d'Ivoire when he was trying to go for a third term unconstitutionally, finding some way of tweaking the constitution. I don't know. But if they are all, in this together, who then watches the watchman? Who then counsels? do you get it? They all seem to be following that trend. Maybe in our instance, not wanting a third term, but in some of the things they do. So then, what moral right will any of these leaders have to go and caution someone like that? And on the other hand, sometimes they even end up congratulating leaders where, in fact, those in that country see something very different. I'll cite something for you. Not necessarily political leadership, but the Africa Bar Association recently conferred some honors on our president on the back of good governance, excellent governance that other leaders should emulate, and an anti-corruption stance, and a few things. And I asked myself, anti-corruption? Good governance? That is me as a media person, as a citizen. I don't know what you see, but I think we've got to the point of hypocrisy, and a lot of our African leaders aren't able to touch other leaders because they know they themselves are doing the same thing. Am I wrong?
You are not wrong. You see, we are getting to get used to bad governance and poverty and backwardness to the extent that when we are involved in it, we rather tend to praise it than revolve it. I mean, than abhor it. So it becomes a problem. If we are kept in a situation of bad governance consistently for a while, and for this government, for example, I don't think that the Bar Association...
And this was the Africa Bar Association, not the Ghana.
Yes, the African Bar Association, they could have done a bit more than they have done by coming to terms with the reality of the situation and eventually coming to see whether that is one of the points to praise our president for. Because more and more we see that the challenge is because of bad governance. We have a huge loan investment, taken for these people by the government. We don't know what they have done with it. So much is being taken, so much is lost. And the feeling is that it's lost in private investments, in private pockets. For example, when you take public money and you personalize it, it can't go back to the public. Normally you keep it.
Right.
And that may have been the reason why you see some of the monies in the houses of people.
And we'll get to Cecilia now.
Yeah. So that's the problem. So when you have so much money taken as loan, meant to boost the economy, and in a few years the economy is the most backward in Africa, then you begin to ask yourselves, where is the 600 billion that we have taken? Where has it gone to? Investments in monies like that presupposes that there are returns. If the returns are not coming forth, where have you taken it? And so the problem, must be observed more thoroughly before you come on to praise, presidents for what they do and all that. So I think that we must begin to be cautious about praising our presidents and our leaders. We must begin to examine the small things that will enable us go into the bigger issues. The devil is always in the details.
The minute issues.
Yes.
And it's always about the basics because like I've said here on the show, time without number, you can think of regime security or military security. But that could even work for you externally. But how about internally? What will make your country, and we keep talking, you hear some government officials sometimes talk about even the US and all of that. Have you paid attention in recent times to what the dynamics are in the United States, their economy, and how things are turning around even when it comes to unemployment? What is our unemployment rate, even among the youth? How about those who are not in any gainful employment? They are not in school, they are not under training, they are not getting any education, and they don't have work. It's a recipe for disaster. So when you look at what happened in Niger, I only bring that up because, and we'll, right after that, we'll get into the economy and related details. My concern, the countries around us are all going, apart from maybe Togo.
Yeah.
That, look at, and Niger is not too far up, is it northwest? Yeah. Or northeast, I should say. You have Mali gone. Guinea, Burkina Faso. How worrying is it for you? I mean, with what is happening all around us?
It's a terrible thing. It's a worrying situation. It presupposes that Ghana has to be very careful in what we are doing. It also presupposes that we should begin to examine the central reason why these countries are going. But, and ECOWAS is not showing enough commitment to seeking peace. The pronouncement about Niger, for example, to giving them 1 week to hand over power.
Well, that has elapsed, and Buhari was denied by his own Senate in terms of the military option.
Those are not, they are not intelligent enough for us to have trust in ECOWAS as an overpowering military organization that can serve the people. But the problem also is that
so I meant Tinubu, Bola Tinubu. I think Tinubu. I may have said something else. Right.
Tinubu. Yeah. So the problem also is that we are beginning to see a transformation, an international transformation within West Africa that should question the real leadership style going on. Because if the military are more interested, are more interested in taking power, then just don't label the reason to be wanton. There must be some reasons, and we need to do some study about it. And I think that Ghana should take it up, study about it very quickly, and see how we can resolve our own issues. Or else, all the red lines that could happen, that could bring about a coup d'etat in a country, Ghana has passed them all. But thankfully, we have come to a point when we are committed to peace, and then a political transformation or change in government as a result of democracy, democratic practices. So we need to study them all. We need to study what is happening, and we need to make sure that we can resolve our own issues. Or else, all the red lines that could happen, that could bring about a coup d'etat in a country, Ghana has passed them all. But thankfully, we have come to a point when we are committed to peace, and then a political transformation or change in government as a result of democracy, democratic practices. So we need to study them all. We need to study what is happening, and we need to make sure we approach this issue in manners that can serve our national interests. At the moment, I think that Ghana is at the edge.
Let's come to our economy, because that is one of the most topical matters right now, and it's one of the main bases on which this administration came to power, the economy and the purported mismanagement under your administration's tenure. And I do admit that there were some concerns at the time from doomsaw and all of that, and the crippling effect it had on the economy. But like you said at the start, governance is supposed to get better over time.
Yes.
And so if you make certain promises to me and I vote for you and oust another administration and you come and give me worse, then it becomes really problematic. Currently, we find ourselves with an economy that has a debt hitting around 600 billion Ghana cedis. Almost.
Yeah.
600 billion.
From 120 billion.
We're also looking at an economy that has a lot of wastage, loopholes. Auditor General report in and out, we see them. The year before, over 17 billion. Last year, over 15 billion. Thankfully, a lot of that can be recovered. The question is whether it will be recovered. Then we look at the taxes that have been heaped. Yesterday, I was going over a phone costing about 1,390 cedis. If you add the COVID-19 levy, NHIA, all those others that come in, you are looking at almost 1,700 cedis, almost 400 cedis added on. Look at the item. Look at the bill. We have the COVID-19 levy, and some people keep asking, why do we still have that levy when you go and get certain services? There's the Bank of Ghana, and maybe I should leave the Bank of Ghana out. Inflation is going up again. For 3 months now, inflation has been shooting up. In fact, Ghana now ranks first with the highest food prices for sub-Saharan Africa. Highest prices of food in sub-Saharan Africa on the back of our inflation. How do you react to that?
Let me start from I'll take you back a little about our administration and the accusation of us as unable to perform, and for which reason we have been changed. And the question of doomsaw, which was key in the campaign against us. Doomsaw was not our problem. It was not caused by the NDC. Doomsaw came about because of our failure to keep investing in energy. And for the 8 years of President Kufuor, a man I admire, I don't want to give an impression that he didn't do well. The 8 years of President Kufuor, he made attempts to add value to our power. That's why Bui came about. But there was no single megawatts of power added to our energy supply. And for all the 8 years, imagine John Mahama and President Mills coming in, the accumulation of investment that took place, foreign direct investment that came about, and then the increase in domestic investment and the need for power at the point about 100 or so, I can't remember the amount of power needed. Megawatts a month required. And so we couldn't immediately get the power as we required. And so there was a need for us to double up. And that's brought about the IPPs, multiple IPPs signed to close the gap. Also remember that at the time, Akosombo was suffering, because our hydropower was suffering because the rains had not been good in the previous year. So immediately we ran into a doomsday situation, a situation where we had to manage power. So it wasn't like doomsday caused by NDC. It was doomsday addressed by NDC. And by 2016, we had finished addressing the problem when these people came in. So Ghanaians didn't want to listen to this. And they kept saying, oh, you are the cause. There was doomsday in your time. But they didn't know where it was coming from. It was coming from MPP. Anyway, so today we are seeing the same people who accuse us of incompetence demonstrating highest level of incompetence Ghanaians have ever seen. Borrowing 600 billion, like you have observed, and not making it reflect the thinking and the policies that they themselves define.
So the 600 billion is not all of, you mentioned around 120 billion
yes.
at the time they took up. So
yes.
it would mean that they have added on over, let's say, Just around 480 billion.
And
or slightly less.
Without demonstrating enough results that we have borrowed this money, we want to do this. And look at the fundamentals as we are talking about. Those were the same fundamentals the so-called exceptional economists talked about, the vice president, when he talked about the fact that if you want to dodge or if you want to give the impression you are doing well, the fundamentals will expose you. The same fundamentals are exposing them. They can't control the spiraling rise in
fact, going back to
inflation.
2016, there's something we've put on JoyNews. You can check it out on Facebook. The current vice president, as a throwback, he is quoted to have said, anything taxable that can be feasibly taxed, they are trying to impose taxes on it. That is the NDC back then. And now, even COVID is gone, yet we're, well, not gone technically in the sense of you cannot contract it. It's still in there, but it's no longer a pandemic. It's not a WHO red line issue, yet we're being taxed for it. Sanitary pads are considered luxuries. They are being taxed.
The accusation of COVID being the reason for their backward development, but their failure in economic governance, is the worst reason they can ever give. COVID has brought them much more money than they could ever imagine. Look at the World Bank, the IMF. IMF alone got us $1.5 billion because of COVID. World Bank donated a number of, we approved a number of monies for agriculture, for youth development and all that. Several of them, millions of dollars because of COVID. They themselves have placed tax on COVID consistently for all these years, and they are still taxing us. And you keep saying because of COVID. They have gotten, it's just mismanagement. And when the monies came around, rather than using it to invest to get Ghanaians get going, they shared it amongst themselves. And it was...
But I mean, how can you say that? Do you have proof of that?
Oh, the proof of it was the DCE who was trying to explain how COVID money was shared, and he said he shared everything. She didn't even get any. And it's happened in every constituency, every district, that they gave to their constituency executives, and they gave to their supporters, and they gave to each of them allocated a certain amount of money. They shared it, literally shared the money. She was caught on tape explaining how they shared the money, and that's not how to run an economy. So they have failed in every aspect of running this economy and creating opportunities for the people of Ghana. They have the one district, one factory, they have listed, one village, one dam, they have listed 1 million for each constituency, and all those kinds of things are all not seen happening or creating value in the development of our people. So essentially, this is a complete failed administration. And I haven't seen such an administration in Ghana before, that you have made promises to do ABCD, you have the resources to do ABCD. They have earned much more than any country, any government had earned in oil revenue, in loans granted them, in tax mobilization, in everything that will make a government comfortable and develop. They have it. And yet, why has it not happened?
And that then begs the question, of course, with what we've been talking about, when you look at the consumer price index and everything in between, the figures I've been mentioning and the fact that food inflation is now the highest, the food inflation in Ghana is now the highest in sub-Saharan Africa. That is going to be felt the most. The grinding poverty is going to be felt the most by the poor. The very people on the fringes of our economic system. They are going to feel it the most because the earnings are so little, and the least shocks to that could be a life or death situation. And that's really where we find ourselves. But when you contemplate that, how do you find it then? I mean, her issue is still being investigated. Now I hear her funds have been frozen by the special prosecutor. I'm talking about Cecilia Abnadapa and the matter in court and all of that. But when you have us all, we were talking about hoarding and how it was affecting the CD's stability. And now you find what more than $1 million, because it was 1 million they took, but there was more. Yeah. And then foreign currency, 300,000 euros, among others, in one person's, home, not even in a bank. Quick reflections on that as well.
Well, I have the impression that more monies are hidden in many more houses than we imagine. But Cecilia, the past issue is a very terrible situation of a government official keeping away wealth that shouldn't have been kept by one person. Well, we cannot completely now say he's guilty for anything, but we can say that there is a problem with government officials not being able to manage resources that belong to the people. And sometimes you find such resources in the houses of people. And her particular case shows that the complaints about corruption is real. I cannot see any business person doing business and earning this much and decide to keep the money in your house. You should be grateful, you should be happy to put it in the bank account and demonstrate how wealthy you are if you are doing genuine business. So those of them who are talking about maybe her husband is rich, her brother was a rich person and gave her the money, it's very banal, it's very...
Are you suggesting, I'll let you go on, but
yeah,
on the other side, members of the NDC, ministers, former ministers,
yeah,
members of parliament and all of that, are you suggesting that if we also did that, if we could, and we went into the houses of some of you, we wouldn't find similar sums of money?
I want a situation where there will be a certain law, a rule now. Let's enter everybody's...
No, before we get into the law, I want you to address that issue.
Yeah.
Are you suggesting if we went into the homes of former ministers under the NDC and even members of parliament now and from the NDC, we wouldn't find similar...
That's what I'm saying. I want a rule, something that will immediately say, look, wherever you are, stay there. Let's take all of you, former ministers and present ministers, to your houses. We want to check to see what you have kept there right now so that they can go and check for us to see whether there will be a person, what you can find in NDC ministers' houses and what you can find in present administration, their houses. I think that in the NDC, there was fear that if you take government money, something will happen to you. The rawest factor is the ruling thing that,
probity, accountability.
It's the thing that defines the NDC right now. And it pains me for people to now call us, the NDC people and other, sometimes they'll be pushed by MPP to say that, look, you are in government, what have you got? And then they will also be responding and say, our people are there, they just allow government power to go away, they don't have anything, they are poor. And then people start praising them for being bad. Oh, they are there, look at how much money they have been able to accumulate. That's the childish and illiterate way of looking at how political people operate. Don't praise people for stealing. Don't say that the NDC hasn't done well because it hasn't stolen. In our time, the fear of being caught stealing was still very paramount in the minds of the leadership and the ministers. Just imagine what happened to Abuga Pele. Just something that very, very...
Vicky Hammer.
And Hammer. By just pronouncement, something happened. And somebody bought a house, and it was mentioned, Rawlings heard it and was talking about it, that he spent money, up to 500,000, buying a house. The fear was there, and that people could not be seen to be blatantly doing the things that we see happening today. So NDC... They may have been some people who did things, but not as a hundreds of what we are seeing now. This time it looks like, well, there's nobody to check us, we are in charge, the government is like a business and we reap out of it. Everybody's going for loan from their ministry and they are getting money out of it. There's a company that belongs to them that takes, the benefits if you go for a loan and all that. And so it's like it's a business for them. It's become a big problem for how we want to see ourselves into the future, how we want to see development happening, led by people we trust. And for us now, I think that Cecilia Dapa has given us a big concern that monies are in the hands of individuals and not meant for development, but meant for themselves. Okay. The monies may even be sent out of the country, which is the worst thing I can say of any country or any African person. That in situations where you have people who are suffering, who need food to eat, food prices are rising, farms are destroyed by floods, and you are taking money into your bedrooms or sending it outside the country, to be saved, buying houses there. I went to the UK for a program, a parliamentary program, and then I passed by a certain house, saw a lot of Ghanaians there, and then the person driving me said, this house is bought by one of our politicians. I don't want to mention his name because I'm not so sure. And I said, well, I'm not sure, I don't know. He said, well, this flat of houses, they are bought by him. And I felt bad, not because he bought it, but because he may have used government money to go and buy it. If you invest the money in Ghana, if you even steal it and invest it in Ghana, it is of much use than going to invest it in a place who don't need it. So
Well, he's gone to whoever that person is, he or she, has made the purchase, and they are obviously reaping the benefits. But the point is not creating those loopholes so that people can do that. But there are a few comments coming through. Some of them I may have to correct a few things on. But Musa Abatua says, the OSP has made a good step in freezing the account of Cecilia Dapa, but we encourage him to go further and initiate prosecution because the source of money cannot be explained. This is the reason we are seeing unprecedented coup d'etats in Africa. Corruption, mismanagement, cronyism, and nepotism is the order of the day. There are some interesting comments also coming through from Don Lewis, who says, Rashid keeps contradicting himself. The question is, was there Dumso under Kufuor's regime? Why then all of a sudden Dumso hit the country under John Mahama? Not all of us are, okay, I will not read the rest of it, but Don Lewis, you may have been living in a different dispensation if you are not aware that there was some Dumso under the Kufuor administration. You may, I don't know how old you are, but the suggestion, in fact, it's a problem that it didn't even start under Kufuor. We had issues even under the Rawlings administration, at the dawn of the Fourth Republic. All through to Kufuor, there were issues, and then inherited by Atta Mills, and then John Mahama. So let's be factual. Let's not just try to...
And then solved by John Mahama.
Throw dust into the eyes of people. I intentionally read your comment to also correct you, in case you actually don't know the right thing. And then there is Don Lewis coming back. This one I will also read as well. It says, Cecilia Dapa's case is no different from John Mahama, single-handedly sharing 40 cedis to all delegates across the country. If John Mahama was able to blow this quantum of millions of cedis without being questioned, and now Cecilia Dapa, the citizens must be worried. This one, I will agree with you on to a certain extent, Don Lewis. But the first one, you were not exactly spot on. But that question, if we are going to tackle the Cecilia Dapas of this country, then we must also ask when the likes of John Mahama, for example, we say TNT, and we question the MPP when they do that. I saw the last time Chairman Wontumi dipping his hand into his pocket, giving out certain money and saying, oh, all these are TNT. The TNT, where will it stop? And how can you get such huge sums of money for delegates and all of that? I mean, look at the numbers.
Well, when people want to contest elections, they solicit funding and are able to get support from friends and from supporters in order to do what they are doing. I got an experience. I came to my constituency to contest my primaries. I had no money at all. In fact, I had only what I had in my bank account, which was very, very minimal. And then I started calling friends. And by the time I realized, I had all the money I needed. And I asked myself, so I could do this.
Friends from where?
Friends who are in work, who are working. I just called somebody and said, look, can you help me? I'm going to do this, that. And then people invested, put money in my account for me. Even including friends who are MPP, I called them to ask, and...
You're telling me some members of the MPP were willing to support you?
Yes,
Your
a member of the MPP who is a friend, who had been a friend in school days. I called him and said, I'm running my primaries. He was kind enough to send something small to me, and I'm grateful for what he did. So
Member of Parliament?
No, not a member of Parliament at all. He's not a member of Parliament. In fact, he's a businessman.
Okay.
He's still insistently MPP, even though he got much of his business in NDC. And then he came to work with MPP. He's complaining he's not gotten jobs, but he got his money when NDC was in power. So, not significant money, just something small, but I'm happy small monies came together. So it is possible that people can raise money and invest. What your mama did, MPP did better than him when they were doing their own primaries.
You mean worse?
You mean worse than... No, given the 40 CDs, they did more. They gave more than what John Mahama did.
But the question is, does it justify, these sums of money? Because you see, my problem is, if you do the basic math, whether someone is giving 40 CDs, or 50 CDs, or 60 CDs, or 100 CDs, multiply that by the thousands of people who come and vote, okay? Yeah. That paints a certain picture. You know what? Let's do the math. I like doing, so let's say even bottom line 40 by, let's assume 2,000. You're getting 80,000. And usually the numbers are much more than these. You are talking about tens of thousands. Beyond, those numbers. If you do the math, you're running into millions. How are we able to raise these kinds of money?
Yeah, I'm addressing the issue to mean that when people are, during elections, people raise money to contest the elections. In the case of John Mahama, there was nothing established to find that he was holding money that didn't belong to him, that he couldn't explain. Okay. I don't know why, if he felt so bad about it, why they didn't ask him where he got his money to enable him to explain where he got it, or why they didn't even go to search his house in the same way as Cecilia Dapa's case happened, At the moment, the monies that are going round in the name of primaries, you can't imagine how much money is sent out. So much, even when they go to greet the delegates, how much money they give them is another thing. In fact, it is a concern we have to put across for Ghanaian politicians and the demands by delegates. I was here a few months ago to discuss the challenge we are having with delegates having problems, candidates having problems with delegates, having to give them money. Somebody called from Koforidua, from Takoradi, and he was saying that from their constituency, they are expecting that when the MPs come, when the aspirants come to contest, they expect nothing less than 5,000 from each aspirant for all the delegates before they will vote for them. I was shocked. Wow. Because you can't ever imagine that happening. Well, maybe now it is possible it can happen in NDC, but you can't imagine that ever happening in our situation. Even 40 cities, people are worried. 5,000 Ghana cedis.
Did you mean, when you said maybe now it is possible to happen under did you mean NPP or NDC?
I'm saying maybe it is possible now.
Because I just want to get it clear so that moving forward, we know. But do you think that is something that we ought to do away with?
That's the point I'm making. I'm saying maybe because I don't know what is happening in the future. But in NTC, you can't imagine somebody getting 5,000 and giving to delegates. They can't find it. They don't have it, And it's happening right away. Last year it happened.
But maybe vehicles, the change, maybe that only happens when you're in power and you have control of the largesse
we're in power.
Of the state.
We were in power.
You have state power. Then the dynamics change. I mean, the reality is sometimes you engage these politicians when they are not in power and they tell, we are hungry, and this and that. When they come to power, the rhetoric is very different.
Well, like I said, in NDC, when we were in power, even 100 Ghana to a delegate, I haven't seen it anywhere. I didn't do that. I couldn't do it. I was a minister. I couldn't do it. I couldn't give up to 100 Ghana cedis for anybody to do TNT. I've been accused.
So you've done something before?
When you have to support your constituency, I don't give money to delegates. What we do is to support the the constituency to be able to function, to bring people to go and come and vote and all that. You know, those ones, whether you like it or not, even a poor MP has to find a way of dealing with that, but not the vote buying kind of plenty money given to a delegate. That is not possible, because if you don't have the money, you can't do it. But let's examine the president, and I want to encourage you to follow
But there is this instance, though, lest I forget. I mean, we've seen a lot of stuff on the MPPs and money being thrown out. But I also recall during your primaries, parliamentary, I want to believe, there was a woman who was even cited by your party. I think some action was taken. She was contesting in one of the places, and she had this car with, I've forgotten what they call that thing, a hood. So she could come out of the 4x4. Yeah. She was throwing money. I think you remember.
I saw it.
She was throwing out money. Not once, twice.
I understand she
and she
a business.
I don't know, whatever business, but the optics.
The optics.
She was throwing out money.
Yeah. So those are the things. Well, if she is doing that, she's a businesswoman. I hear she came from outside the country or something like that. She had money and she wanted to win an election, and eventually she lost. You know, it's not easy. NDC, normally you can't use money to get the people. I have several examples. I don't want to give them here, where people demonstrated a lot of wealth and didn't win their elections.
Right.
You know, we've gone to the point where we look at the quality of the person rather than the monetary gifts. But let's examine. I want you guys who are in the media to begin to examine the monies doing the rounds right now, and whether we shouldn't be questioning them. The present delegates.
As for question, we ought to, and that is why I agree, especially when and it's something I'm waiting for when it comes to Cecilia Dapa, for example. Establish the source of your wealth. How did you get these sums of money? And I really wish we could do that for all former and current ministers, all former and current members of parliament, just to see what is in there. And I think our regime of, and that is why I agree with that move for the public officers bill, to ensure that your sources of wealth, accountability, and what you may acquire in government are streamlined, so we can know when you came into power and you declared your assets, these were all the things you had. When you are exiting, what are the things you have? We've had people, young as I am, who have probably not done any work like I have worked for many, many, many years now, all of a sudden buying houses in certain places that for you, it may take you even a century and you wouldn't acquire that kind of wealth. Imagine a young person close to my age purchasing a house in the AU village. Someone who practically hasn't done any work goes into government. I mean, these are stories from both ends. What do we do?
That's the question, and that's the issue we take with individuals and politicians and parties and governments, that you bring them to question how their money to secure the monies they have secured to do what they have done within the space of time that they are in operation. They are functioning as government officials. And it's important for the media to hinge on that, to get onto that and begin to question it and frighten politicians away from, taking public money and displaying it the way we do it. It's important for us, important for the government, but not to give them the leverage of all the time doing everything we need to do. And then rather than blaming us, you are praised everywhere. Oh, he got this, he got that. I'm blamed for most of the time that, he is in government, he was a minister, he had nothing. As if it's an offense, So I think that...
Kwame Nkrumah left office with nothing. When he was ousted, he had nothing.
Nothing.
Even what was left by way of a building, from the many facilities he built across the country, over 17,000 of them. We'll get to Saglemi and affordable housing. But the ones he built in South Suntresu, here in Accra, Latebi Okoshi, in many different parts of the country, not even one did he keep for himself. In fact, even what he had put up, Pidiasi, he gave back to us for use, for our leaders. And our leaders, NDC and MPP, use it today when, in terms of the give back, it's not really there. So I agree with you. It should be more selfless. And I don't know why our rhetoric is like this, because when you go to the US, for example, presidents make their money after they have served their term.
Yeah.
Then they deliver speeches and they do this and they do that. And that is where they earn about 100,000, 200,000 per event. That's how some of them make a lot of their money. Here, our people rob the leaders, rob the people blind. Which then brings me to two issues that I'm hoping we can wrap with. The Bank of Ghana. Are you going to be joining your caucus to, so to speak, picket? You've given the Bank of Ghana, it's the governor and his deputies an ultimatum, 21-day ultimatum, that if they don't resign, you'll be hitting them and hoping that you will compel them to resign. I know why, but explain to the people of Ghana why you are embarking on this.
Well, the Bank of Ghana is a lender of last resort, is a supervisor of all the banks. It instills discipline in the banks, and we have seen that over the years, banks are closed down because they are unable to manage their resources. And so they violate the banking rules, and so the Bank of Ghana, rather than correcting or stabilizing them, helping them to stabilize, they close them down. It shows that there must be discipline in how we manage our banking affairs. The Bank of Ghana has demonstrated that it is not disciplined in what it's supposed to do. It has, without resort to any legal principle, committed to print 80 billion Ghana cedis, borrowed half of it to government, now tells government it is unable, it is forgiving government for everything it has done. It means that this is done without recourse to parliament, without recourse to the people. The Bank of Ghana, in the end, has lost about 55 billion. It's recourse a loss of about 55 billion Ghana cedis, meaning that its equity has come to zero. And so this is a government institution, a state institution that is most important, very, very important in our monetary policy. First of all, it controls the policy, the fiscal policy, manages the fiscal policy. It controls the monetary policy. It determines how even people are employed. If they want people to be employed, they lower the interest rates, money is available, they're invested, and they're able to make money. They're able to create jobs for people. When there's inflation, it has a way of dealing with it. So it has a key role to play in running the economy. In all the stands that it has a role to play in creating a situation where we can have a strong and viable economy, it has failed. And so we think that this failure is also because of the human factor. Imagine spending $130 million Ghana cedis in servicing their vehicles only. Can you imagine that?
Purchase of computers, many millions, benefits to directors, all of that. And you're seeing increments in a year when we're trying to get an IMF deal over 240%, 87%, 140% year on year. So those are the reasons. But is asking them to step aside the way to go, especially where at the point we find ourselves? Is it the best option to trigger the nuclear option, so to speak, and say the governor and his deputies should go? Then we replace them, and then what? At least they have institutional memory. They've been there.
I mentioned to you that much of the challenges they have is a result of human factor, inability to say no to insistence on government to do what they are supposed to not to do. To do the right, be seen doing the right. They can't be seen doing the right. They seem to be an appendage of government and then fails in that independent stance that is required of them. And their failure is seen in the details of the accounts they have presented to us. And we think that with such glaring failure, they have no role to continue to be in that office. In fact, I saw A+. A+ said that instead of going to commit suicide, you are still insisting and you are still there.
And on the back of all of that, the central bank is also planning on putting up a new headquarters worth $250 million. About 2.8 billion Ghana cedis.
Yes.
Only God knows how we can deal with that.
But you see, in the absence of reserves, they now have only 8 days reserves. And what do you use reserves for? To acquire assets and to do this, that. So you don't have assets. I mean, you don't have reserves. You are using... Where are you getting this money to go and put up the building?
Well, only time
That's
will
part
tell.
of the irresponsibility.
We have to go. So I want us to quickly touch in the next 2 minutes and wrap with Saglemi. Everything that has happened. I had Sam George join me here a few days ago, talk about the fact that, and it's within his constituency, Ningo Pram Pram.
Yes.
His family gave out the land for a public enterprise. Now, if we are thinking of making it a private enterprise, there are dynamics to follow. Government simply cannot do that. And he has said, your party has said you would resist any attempt at doing that. You are warning private investors not to go near it because should you come to power, you would take them on. Sam George says about $7 million worth of items, doors, fittings, and all of that were stolen, and that at a point, he, together with his team, caught police officers, national security operatives, doing this in a Kia Bongo or whatever, carted them off to the Chopoli police station for action. Till today, nothing has happened.
Can we agree that this is a cause of financial loss to the states and that the government, the whole of the Nanado's government, must be held responsible for causing financial loss to the states? Because, like I said, government is a continuum. You have come to office, you've come to meet this situation there. You have allowed it to go to the point when even state officials are stealing from what is supposed to be an investment for the people. You have allowed the thing to get to the point where rot has taken place, destruction has taken place. Rather than continuing, they have gone to do some new houses somewhere. I mean, this is unacceptable, and government must be held responsible, and I think that is a cause of financial loss to the states, and must be brought to the book.
Final words, Rashid. It's been an interesting conversation, but we have to go. We'll be taking a break shortly. Final words?
Oh, well, final words. First of all, I think that Ghanaians must begin to wake up, and we have a big opportunity not to encourage the coup d'etats happening elsewhere, but to use our thumb to take a decision. I've been saying that anybody who continues to talk about breaking the eight is not a patriotic citizen. With all the failures we have been observing and we have seen, with all the backward economic decisions that have been taken, with all the failures of governance, you can still think about asking for eight for 4 more years. And it shows that you are not patriotic enough, you don't love Ghana. It must come to a point that we use our fingers to take a decision. That decision must be taken in 2024. And I think that Ghanaians must wake up to take that decision before the worst can happen to us. And secondly, wishing to let everybody know that we in NDC are prepared. We are committed to do the right. We have learned our lessons, and we want to make sure the right thing is done. We want to change the circumstances of governance and create more confidence in the Ghanaian.
Rashid Pelpuo, thank you so much for joining the conversation. Rashid Pelpuo is Member of Parliament for Was Central. He joined us this morning for breakfast. Right before I go, because this message came through as well, I'm going to do it now. A very happy birthday to Mr. Edem Riverson Saw. Mr. Edem Riverson Saw, Assistant Music Director, Bethel Revival Choir. Edem, a very happy birthday to you, and it's coming from Jessica Ahedo and all of us to you. Do stay with us on the AM show. There's a lot of action coming your way. Up next, you don't want to miss it. We'll be right back.